Module 4.3 will discuss mainstreaming gender and human rights. We are going to start by covering two key. The first theme is gender equality and social inclusion. Gender equality and social inclusion is the state where all women, men, and individuals with diverse backgrounds enjoy equal rights and opportunities. Let's break these two concepts down further. Gender equality is the equality between men and women, whereby equal chances or opportunities exist for men, women, boys, girls, and gender diverse people. Social inclusion is the process of improving participation in society, particularly for people who are disadvantaged, by enhancing opportunities, access to resources, voice, and respect for rights. Social inclusion means removing the barriers to people's participation by addressing the reasons why they may be excluded in the first place, which can include factors like ethnicity, religion, age, disability, race, sex, gender, education, sexual orientation, income, culture, and geography. The second theme is governance and human rights. Governance and human rights involves strengthening governments and government institutions to make sure they abide by good governance practices and create public policies and services that uphold human rights, that are inclusive, gender responsive, and where possible, gender transformative. As a reminder, human rights are intrinsic values that give all human beings dignity. We are born with human rights, and they are not created by any law or government. So how can we take a human rights-based approach, and who is in charge of making sure human rights are respected? I have three groups or buckets of people here that have different roles and responsibilities. So let's start with rights holders. Given the universal nature of human rights, every individual is a rights holder with certain entitlements. Some specific groups whose rights are not fully realized, respected, or protected can also be called rights holders. A human rights-based approach focuses on building capacity of rights holders to exercise their rights. The next group is duty bearers. Duty bearers are government or state actors, including institutions and sectors at the national, provincial, or regional, and local level. A human rights-based approach focuses on the capacity of all sectors of the government to meet its legal obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. Duty bearers have obligations to put in place equitable laws and systems that enable individuals to enjoy their rights and seek legal recourse when their rights have been violated. The final group is responsibility holders. So responsibility holders are other societal actors that can have a positive or negative influence on the human rights in question. Responsibility holders may include parents, the private sector, religious leaders, educators, community leaders, social movements, civil society, women's organizations, academic institutions, neighboring countries, and more. Now, it may seem difficult to take all of these considerations and implement them into policies and programs that rights holders can enjoy. Luckily, there are many international mandates and guiding documents that can help duty bearers, i.e. government or state actors, implement gender equality, social inclusion, governance, and human rights themes. We will explore some of these documents now. As mentioned, there are many international commitments, mandates, treaties, and guiding documents that can help countries promote human rights and gender equality. Let's explore some international documents that exist and that Suriname has actually committed to over the past 30 years. In 1993, Suriname ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC. CEDAW aims to ensure gender equality and protect women's rights by prohibiting discrimination in legislation. In 1994, Suriname approved of the Program of Action of ICPD, which places human rights at the center of the Global Development Agenda. 1995 was the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which outlined a comprehensive global agenda for achieving gender equality and empowering women in 12 critical areas, including education, health, and violence against women. In 2002, the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women was adopted. And in 2006, the Palermo Protocol and Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination were implemented, and the Palermo Protocol was regarding the prevention and punishment of human trafficking, in particular trafficking of women and children. The final document I'll highlight is the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, or the 2030 SDGs, which are a set of 17 global goals that address various interconnected challenges such as poverty, inequality, climate change, and sustainable development, with the aim of creating a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable world by 2030, hence 2030 SDGs. Of particular interest in this module is Goal 5, which outlines global targets and actions to achieve gender equality. Suriname has made progress on implementing some of these international documents and mandates to mainstream gender equality and social inclusion, governance, and human rights. Note the definition of gender mainstreaming is the process of assessing the implications for men and women of any planned action, including legislation, policies, or programs, in all areas and at all levels, with the ultimate goal of achieving gender equality. Let's look at some examples of gender mainstreaming in Suriname. So Suriname adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in 1995. In 2019, Suriname's Bureau Gender Affairs conducted a national review of the Beijing Declaration to document progress and challenges related to gender equality in the 25 years since adoption of the declaration. So what has this progress for gender equality looked like? Progress has included stronger legal and policy context, the formulation of various national plans, including the Suriname Gender Plan of Action and Suriname Gender Vision Policy document, which we'll explore, various programs and projects, increased access to basic education, health and social services for women, availability of disaggregated data, the capacity strengthening of service providers, and the acknowledgement, protection, and realization of human rights. One of the top 5 priorities from the 2014 to 2019 time period, so 5 years, was related to improving basic services and infrastructure for women. This priority focused on building access to clean drinking water and sanitation for villages in the interior of Suriname, awareness-raising materials around unclean water, improving access to safe sanitation, and climate change-specific water infrastructure projects. So let's look at a few of these. Suriname has taken on several climate change projects that seek to improve infrastructure and basic services and that take a gender-responsive approach. The Enhancing Access to Drinking Water for the Maroon community of Essigron within the district of Brokopondo aimed to strengthen the institutional capacity of the Ministry of Regional Development to design and improve drinking water management and storage capacity in vulnerable communities in the interior of Suriname. The Climate Resilient Access to Drinking Water for the Maroon community of New Lombe of the district of Brokopondo aimed to reduce women's time spent collecting water, thus allowing for increased investment of time in social and productive activities. It proposed completion of the water distribution system, which will pump and filter well water to all households in the community. The next project was a Center for Practical Knowledge Education at the Anton de Kom University in Suriname. The INFRA Hub will conduct research on and gain knowledge in small infrastructure measures combating the effects of climate change in the built environment. And the final project involves combating flooding and increasing water supply through wastewater treatment. And this technique was applied to a small pilot within the old Kampong in Marienburg, located in the district of Komawene. As mentioned, two major achievements from the Beijing Review included the creation of two national gender-specific documents. The Suriname Gender Plan of Action 2019 to 2020 identifies concrete, tangible activities to implement gender goals identified in Suriname's development plan for 2017 to 2021. The plan of action has 7 priority areas, as I've listed here, and one of them is environment and climate change. This priority area focuses on promoting gender-responsive environmental policy and practice, developing gender awareness material and training for environmental organizations, including women leadership and participation in various environmental related projects, including installing solar panels, Suriname's gold mining, and preserving the community of Nickeries swamplands. The second national gender document is the Suriname Gender Vision Policy Document of 2021 to 2035. This document sets out a long-term vision for gender equality and equity in Suriname. It elaborates on Suriname's international and regional obligations to achieve gender equality and empowerment, and it uses a gender mainstreaming approach to policy design and implementation. And gender mainstreaming, recall, is looking at the inequalities or discrepancies between men and women and then implementing interventions to limit or eliminate these inequalities with the overall goal of achieving gender equality. The vision document has the same priority areas as the Gender Plan of Action. Let's look at some long-term goals specifically related to the environment and climate change priority. The first goal is to achieve universal and equal access to safe and affordable drinking water by 2030. Achieve proper and reliable sanitation and hygiene for all and put an end to public defecation, paying particular attention to the requirements for women, girls, and vulnerable people. Support local communities in improving water management and sanitation. Promote mechanisms to increase capacity with regards to effective planning and management linked to climate change. And ensure effective participation of women, particularly rural, maroon, and indigenous women, in the formulation and implementation of policy and action plans that protect biodiversity and lower the risk of disasters and climate change. Another Suriname document I want to highlight is Suriname's National Adaptation Plan of 2019 to 2029, which recognizes the need to include gender equality considerations in climate change adaptation. In fact, one of the strategic level priorities in the National Adaptation Plan is climate change adaptation that respects Suriname society and culture and reduces gender and social inequities. Some gender-specific objectives that are outlined in the National Adaptation Plan include equitable participation by vulnerable and underrepresented people in climate adaptation implementation, the incorporation of local knowledge, experiences, and practices in climate action, and national behavioral, attitudinal, and lifestyle transformation to support climate adaptation activities. The Beijing Review also revealed challenges for gender equality in Suriname. Challenges were related to translating evidence-based national legislation and policies into annual plans and programs. There were issues related to ongoing poverty and social inequality, high mortality rates for mothers and an HIV presence, and heavy government budget cuts due to the Surinamese recession from 2014 to 2018. Suriname has two major priorities to achieve gender equality between 2020 to 2025. And the two priorities are on screen here, so strengthening women's participation in ensuring environmental sustainability, and gender-responsive disaster risk prevention, reduction, and resilience building. And the second priority, there's actually been a few examples of projects that are being implemented or that have been implemented So let's explore these. The first one is being led by the National Coordination Center for Disaster Management and is focused on flooding and vulnerable populations in Suriname's interior. Specifically, the NCCR is working to ensure effective participation of Indigenous Maroon women when discussing disaster management and emergency assistance. They are also in the process of training regional district administration officers in disaster management procedures, and a number of the staff that they are training are female and from the local communities. The next example is the Community Resilience Building Caribbean Region Program, which is aiming to increase the resilience of vulnerable communities in the Caribbean. And they are applying a gender responsive and ecosystem approach in the context of disaster risk management and adaptation to climate change. The overall goal of this project is to make vulnerable communities more resilient to potential disasters. Finally, the UNDP, with support of the Suriname government, is implementing the Enabling Gender Responsive Disaster Recovery Project, or ENGENDER. And this project is focused on analyzing gender inequalities and ensuring that they are considered when addressing disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. The ultimate outcome is to support improved climate resilience for women, girls, and key vulnerable populations in the Caribbean. The ENGENDER project has already produced several key gender and climate change documents for Suriname, some of which have actually informed this module and these videos. So to wrap up this module, let's explore some recommendations from the Suriname ENGENDER project. How can Suriname support gender mainstreaming related to disaster risk reduction and climate change at a national level? So the first recommendation from the ENGENDER report is to integrate gender considerations in national policies, laws, plans, and budgets related to disaster risk management. The second recommendation is to facilitate and establish a disaster risk management committee with diverse representation, including women and Indigenous actors, and to ensure that there are mechanisms in place that can review any decisions through a gender lens. The next recommendation is to facilitate access to loans to households headed by women or women from low-income households to strengthen their livelihood resilience. And related to this capacity building is training programs and microcredits, but ensuring that eligibility for these does not depend on gender or land owning status. And the final recommendation is to facilitate national capacity for sex disaggregated data collection through information management systems and capacity building of disaster management officers and main focal points. What about gender mainstreaming at a community level? Related to disaster preparedness, communities can develop education and awareness raising initiatives at schools and in public places that specifically target women and girls. This may include using informal games to engage youth on disaster preparedness strategies. Another strategy is establishing early warning systems that can be accessed and understood by all members of a community. And this may involve door-to-door visits, separate consultation of men and women, planning community gatherings at times that are suitable for both men and women so that everyone is informed about the early warning system. Support communities in organizing preparedness drills that involve women and girls. Ensuring female aid workers are available to help female victims. Ensuring there are relief funds for employment projects for women to support economic recovery post-disaster. When planning shelters, emergency shelters, and relief camps, ensuring the sociocultural and economic needs and preferences of both men and women are taken into account, as well as safety considerations. And gender awareness training for volunteers working in disaster areas, including crisis management and sexual and gender-based violence training. Related to disaster risk management plans, this may involve mapping vulnerability at the community level, incorporating targeted risk management activities into community-based programs, and training women to conduct vulnerability assessments. identifying critical facilities for evacuation, and collecting gender disaggregated data at the community level to inform the disaster risk management plans. Related to participation, ensuring women's participation in vulnerability assessments and on local disaster risk management committees, and promoting gender equity in participation of disaster risk management related activities. Finally, related to capacity building and training, we want to build women and girls coping strategies, provide training to women on safety techniques, coping strategies, and risk assessments, train women to understand early warning systems and what they can do to prepare for a disaster, and provide training on overall climate resilience and ensuring they have livelihood resilience. A final positive note to make is that women and girls can be strong agents of change. In Suriname, women play a pivotal role in natural resource management and in other productive and reproductive activities at the household and community level. This puts them in a very valuable position to contribute to livelihood strategies to adapt to climate change. Their extensive knowledge and expertise that can also be used for climate change mitigation, disaster reduction, and adaptation make them effective actors and agents of change. So we need to ensure women and girls have capacity, time, and equal opportunity to take on leadership and change-making roles. Thank you for joining us for Module 4, How Does Climate Change Interact with Gender? Please return to the home page and click the quiz link to test your knowledge on what you just learned.